Welcome to Liminal Space, where we explore the thresholds of identity, culture, and experience. I am Susan Sue, one half of the hosting duo. Along with my friend Matt, we've created this podcast for those who find themselves navigating the spaces in between, whether in between cultures, worlds, or ideas. Each episode, we delve into the rich complexity of modern Chinese stories, as told by those who exist at its peripheries: diaspora voices, third culture kids, and individuals who embody the bridge between China and the world and between tradition and innovation. Step into liminal space with us, where we find meaning in the transitions, the gray areas, and the moments of becoming.
Today, we have the pleasure of introducing a dear friend, Ming Khor, who's an education entrepreneur, a former nomad, and an emerging content creator. So, welcome, Ming. It's great to have you, man.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Susan. It's really good to be here.
Great. So, kind of before we track your journey to China and also to talk about what holds in the future for you, why don't you give us a little bit of context of kind of what people might know you the best for and kind of what you've spent most of your life building so far?
Well, I am a traveler. I love going to different cultures and countries. Growing up, I grew up in the United States, and growing up, my family would take trips back to their home countries of Singapore and Malaysia. So I grew up just experiencing many different cultures, and it's become part of my identity.
Mm-hmm.
After college, I took a full-time job in China as a volunteer teacher, and I spent the last 6 years living in actually not the last 6 years, but from 2016 to 2022, living in China, building a business around travel. The last 4 years, I was a digital nomad, spending time in multiple countries in
Mm-hmm.
Asia. So I love, let's say, liminal spaces and trying to challenge myself with new perspective. That's what my friends would say I'm best known for.
Awesome. Great. So you mentioned you have a mixed Malaysian and Singaporean heritage. So what was it like growing up where you grew up with kind of this mixed heritage? Were there a lot of other kind of Asian Americans around you? And also feel free to talk about, I guess, any connections that you had with your culture at that time.
Yeah, so I grew up in Washington, D.C., which is already a very multicultural place. When you travel through the airport on the way back, most people there are people of color. So
Mm,
I grew up in a very diverse environment. And growing up, I identified as Asian American. What I didn't realize is that my particular subset is actually a minority among Asian Americans, which is already a minority in the
right.
United States. So my parents are from Singapore and Malaysia. So at the time, these two countries were British colonies. So they were already kind of in between Eastern and Western culture at the
Mm-hmm.
time. Growing up, my parents actually spoke English as their mother tongue, which is not common for people of Asian descent. They
Right.
both came from large families. Half of their brothers and sisters were sent to Chinese language schools by their parents. The other half
Mm-hmm.
were sent to English language schools. So I guess I kind of grew up very used to cultural differences. Growing up at home in DC, we had a mix of cultures. So we spoke English at home. Growing up, I didn't speak any Chinese. We went to, my parents are both Christians. So we grew
Mm-hmm.
up going to church, but we also celebrated Chinese New Year. So we had a mishmash of cultures. And I guess I learned that I'm a naturally optimistic person. So my biggest takeaway is that there's a lot to enjoy from different cultures, and I think I latched onto this idea that yeah, I really want to find you know the selling points, the enjoyable things about different cultural traditions, and being someone coming from different cultures, I feel like I have equal access to enjoy these things. Right. So
Yeah.
Chinese culture is not completely myself, and yet it's not completely foreign. And American culture is what I grew up in. And so yeah, I just find it a real position of privilege to be able to kind of step in and out of different cultural spaces.
True. True. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. And No, that's really interesting how both your parents, their native tongues were English,
Hmm.
and that kind of that mixed environment that you grew up with. So you mentioned that you didn't have that much exposure to China growing up in particular. So tell us about your first experience in China. I assume that was your high school trip there as a volunteer. Like what sparked that trip or what led to that trip and what did you experience there in China
Hmm.
that would
Was it
that
life
would
changing?
Yeah, it
that made you
certainly
go
was.
back later?
Yeah, so actually growing up, I really didn't have any close identification with my Asian culture apart from maybe, once a year Chinese New Year greetings.
Hmm.
Like I said, my parents both spoke English at home. They both speak Asian dialects, but English was the only common language at home. And growing up, it was the time of Pax Americana. So I was
Hmm.
very proud to be an American. I completely drank that Kool-Aid. And in fact, I really didn't want to have much to do with my Asian culture at all.
Yeah.
When I became a teenager, I suddenly something just switched in my brain, and I suddenly started developing a craving. I hit my growth spurt, is what it was, and I suddenly had a craving for Asian food, and that was my first inkling that hey, wow, there's this dimension to my culture which is actually quite interesting. Like this noodles tastes a lot more flavorful than pizza and fries. And I started incorporating Asian food into my diet. During our home trips to Singapore and Malaysia, I was excited to see the culture there. And I was
Hmm.
like, hey, these elements of Chinese culture, my heritage, things like Chinese characters, art forms like kung fu. I had a kung fu movie phase for a while. These things are actually
Wow.
really cool and they're worth exploring. So I ended up taking a trip to China as a teenager. My parents signed me up for this volunteer trip and they said, all right, you're going to do something productive this summer. It was my junior year of high school. And all I knew about this trip was that I would be teaching English to college students and then also in a rural village. So two locations in one summer. It was my first time in China. It was 2005. I remember from the minute the plane landed in Beijing Capital Airport on the bus, just looking at all of the construction going on outside, I was like, wow, there's something special happening in this country. And the process of 2 weeks volunteering, especially in the villages in China, it connected me to certain cultural elements of China, which I can go into later that, for some reason really spoke to me. And it activated this
Hmm.
switch that, yeah, like I want to learn more. I want to spend more time in this culture. I want to learn more about what it has to offer. And it led to all of my subsequent career and the personal moves since.
Wow. Yeah, no, that sounds like that trip really did change your life
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Was there a particular experience, if you still remember
Yeah.
from then, that really struck you? Was there like any like just really cool story or experience from that trip that I think that contributed this life changing this, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah. So going to China, you're able to encounter experiences which deepen your understanding of certain cultural archetypes. So for example,
Mm.
as Asian Americans, we all know this trope of studying hard, right? Like your parents oh, we
Yeah.
came, to this country, you got to study hard so you can get a good job. And we kind of like
Hmm.
live it out. I remember when I was growing up, there was this YouTube video. This guy named Eric, and his mom like is berating him for not studying hard enough. It's really funny. So we kind of grow up with these ideas as kind of a half joke. And I remember first time I went to China, I finally got to see this study mentality in the motherland. I
Hmm.
remember the English language school that I was teaching at. It was a boarding school, and so the kids lived at the school and they would come. They were mainly college age kids and older. And I remember walking into the classroom at 11 p.m. and the kids are still studying and they're trying to learn
Yeah.
English by reading the dictionary. And I was like, this blows every single stereotype I have like to the next level. And for me, it's not just something foreign, right? It's not like I have exposure to this mentality, but to
Hmm.
see it like taken to the third degree in China, it inspires a curiosity to understand more, right? And as I talk to the kids, I ask them questions like, why do you study this way? and learned about, how it's kind of normal to kind of learn things by memorizing. And then
Hmm.
on an even deeper level, why are you studying so hard? So what drives that? So this idea that, they want to access more opportunities, and they see learning a foreign language as critical to their future. So, rather than seeing it as, I think the benefit of being someone that's cross-cultural is that with a hand and with a stake in both cultures is that you don't see these behaviors as oddities, but more like opportunities to explore a part of yourself more deeply.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I definitely resonate with that as well. I think growing up in the U.S., for example, we kind of take the stereotypes as just like an aspect of the social environment that we live in. But if you kind of try to unpeel where these came from, and also if you want to unlock the kernels of truth behind aspects of reality that actually relate to uh,
Hmm.
why we are perceived in this way, then those clues will all be in the motherland, so to speak. So, yeah, super interesting. And so, kind of on the topic, you do this volunteer teaching project, and then I remember, I think in a past conversation, you told me that like service learning and these service projects are a really big part of your life growing up, right? So I was just wondering if you could touch a little bit upon that, especially because we'll get into Keru in the future,
Sure.
and just wondering how would you say, kind of looking back now, those service trips that you went on growing up, how did they kind of shape the kind of person that you became, or the kind of worldview that you developed?
Yeah. I think that I was really lucky to discover something that I connected with at a fundamental level at that age. Sometimes in life, you just stumble across something. Maybe it's planned. A lot of the times it's unplanned, and it resonates with you at a very deep level. So for
Hmm.
me, that was this trip going to China to teach English for 2 weeks. I call it a service trip. So there were three aspects that really stuck with me. The first was making friends and connecting with people across cultures. And to this day, this idea that you can meet someone that is from a completely different background from you, maybe doesn't even speak the same language, has a completely different schooling, and yet there is something that connects you. So that to me is a very encouraging thing, because it means that there is some sort of common humanity between people that is immutable. And so, you know, it excites me because once you see things in this way, it makes me feel that there's a world full of people like this that I can connect with. And every
Hmm.
single person is a portal into a new culture, a new way of doing things. It's a path to discover. So in my first service trip, that was the first thing that stuck with me. This idea that I have a way to make friends across culture, and that there's people that exist everywhere that could teach me a new way of looking at things, and I just have to find them, right? So that has been a fuel that has stuck with me to this day, 20 years since going on that first volunteer trip. The
Wow.
second thing was doing something meaningful with other people. So I love doing stuff together with friends. I love group experiences, especially when they're around something that is near and dear to my heart. So this idea of helping other people and also being helped by them and doing it together with your friends, to me, it unlocks this sense of goodwill that you have with other people that really I have not found in many social contexts, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
growing up, you go to school. I'm sure you have friends at school, but your task there is to study, right? In the workplace, you might have workplace colleagues. If you're lucky, you might be doing something that you love, but you have to follow a certain set of rules, like you need to make money. When you do service, all of these, the primary goal of service is to help other people. And I find that the group vibes that are, I guess, generated through
Mm-hmm.
service is something that I find very powerful. And that's something that to this day, I love helping other people with friends and just having this mutual exchange. And then the last one, really
Mm-hmm.
quickly, is China. So China in 2005 was on the move. People were hungry. And I think it's really exciting to step into a place where opportunities abound. They're just on the ground waiting for you to pick up. The
Mm-hmm.
energy of that type of environment is something that, I find very inspiring. And I guess it's one reason which led me to pick entrepreneurship as a career. So those three things um are what stuck with me from that first trip.
Got it. Wow. Very, very poignant. I appreciate that. So, did you, I guess, from that trip onwards, did you know that you wanted to be a so-called entrepreneur after that? And, is that something that you studied in college? I guess walk us through kind of the path of what you decided to pursue in college, and then how that
Yeah.
maybe connects to what came afterwards.
So that trip happened in my junior year of high school. I was 17 at the time. The next year was senior year. And I think because of that trip, it helped me realize that my interests are what I just said. So cross-cultural service, helping other people, China related. And it actually led me to choose international relations as a major. I
Oh, I
minored in
see.
East Asian studies as well. Yeah. And at the time I thought I was going to be a diplomat. So because of this inclination, I actually chose to study abroad. I went to the University of Toronto. So
Mm,
I'm an American. I went to Canada for school. And for those who aren't in the know, Canada and America are actually very, very different. I remember
yeah.
it was, yeah, when I matriculated, it was 2006. It was actually the height of US intervention in the Middle East in the war on terror. And,
Hmm.
and, you know, in the US, we had this mentality that kind of like today where might makes right. And,
Hmm.
like you kind of drank the Kool-Aid that, yeah, we're going to make the world safe and we're fighting terror. And when I went to Canada, I got a completely different perspective on the United States intervention abroad. So I
Yeah.
love that it challenged my views. At the time, I was thinking, yeah, I want to become a diplomat. Like I want to be on the front lines, doing negotiations and like being the face of my country, representing it abroad. That was my thinking at the time, and throughout all 4 years of college. And I just want to say that I was so impacted by my initial volunteering trip that I continued doing it every single year. So as a senior in high school and as a freshman, junior, sophomore, and junior in college, I went back and I taught English in China every single year. Obviously changing responsibilities, obviously a lot of different lessons, but that's how meaningful I thought the activity was.
Gotcha.
Wow, that just made me wonder too, since you said you went back like every single year and China was obviously developing very rapidly back then. So what were some changes you saw during each year, like coming back? Like I remember even as a child when I visited every year, there would be like a new skyscraper that I didn't know existed before that like just emerged. How was it like going back year after year and seeing these changes both like maybe physically and culturally?
Yeah, it was great. I feel like when I went, it was still in the early stages of China's opening up. So infrastructure was obviously going gangbusters. So the years that I covered were 2005 to 2009. And remember, China was preparing for the Olympics in 2008. So from those
Hmm.
early 3 years, I saw the construction of the bird's nest in Beijing. I also got to experience China during the Sichuan earthquake. So I was there that summer and I actually went to Sichuan to
Dang.
volunteer, so I was
Okay.
able to see the response. And it was just incredible. Chinese people I've always found Chinese people very welcoming, and getting to experience in different culture, in different contexts, from urban context to rural context, in this environment of openness was just a real privilege. I have to say that my favorite, I guess, like two memories stick out mainly for their novelty. So the first was going to Beijing. There was a market called Hongqiao where
Hmm.
foreign tourists could go and bargain for all sorts of things. So I remember, and we would bargain for shirts and like swords and all sorts of trinkets, and that was like
Yeah.
obviously a really super fun experience. And I think by 2013, 14, these markets had completely disappeared. And then
Yeah.
I also remember China as a country that was trying to figure out rules. So I remember like one time we were on a bus and the bus was going to the airport, except it went down the wrong path. So it basically did a U-turn on that road, went against traffic to go back into the right path of the station. I was like, that's just the way things happen in China. I
Hmm.
found it fascinating that places in the world operated on their own rules. And obviously, these things changed over time as China became
Yeah.
more
I don't think you could do
developed.
that anymore.
But it was really fun. I mean, like you were like, wow, this is like freedom.
Yeah. Whatever makes it happen, right? Whatever we need to get the ship back on track, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
China was like wild back then. Remembering things from that happened when I was a kid, and it was like, that's not gonna happen like
Hmm.
nowadays.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's special, and I think what strikes me about that is I've come to realize that, every season in society or life is temporary, and you don't know if it's going to last a year, a day, 5 years,
Mhm.
10 years. So for me, that's really cultivated this mindset that, you need to be grateful and be in the present and just enjoy the moment for whatever it is. I think that today people are kind of tied to their concept of what life should be, but it's important to realize that things are temporary. And I actually think that
Mhm.
one of the advantages of being cross-cultural or being used to liminality or in
Mhm.
liminal spaces that you're primed to switch to the next thing, right? You're in a very convenient position that you're adaptable. And I think that, yeah, you got to realize that things are temporary. But as someone that exists in a liminal space with that conditioning, you're also very primed to move on to the next thing. And for me, that's been helpful in my professional and personal life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And kind of moving in the liminal, living in the liminal, it allows you to see the opportunities, I guess, like you said, to move on to the next thing, to jump into the next culture, perhaps,
Yeah.
and also connecting to the point of, everything is temporary, everything is impermanent. I would say the same thing is true for your perception of like what culture or cultures you're built from, right? Because
Yeah.
that's also constantly evolving. And because it's constantly evolving and changing, that means that it's an impermanent thing. And that's something that I'm sure you feel when you're moving through or living in different countries and traveling to different places, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. For sure.
Circling back then to kind of your life trajectory, kind of went off a tangent on like more China, like wow.
Hmm.
So then so you eventually would go back to China, but what happened between like I want to be a diplomat and represent my country to like eventually becoming an entrepreneur in China? Like what
Hmm.
was what happened in
Big
college
shift.
and
Yeah.
how did that shift happen?
Okay, so on a high level, the high level answer to your question is I realized more about myself and my preferences, and I felt that those were best expressed through entrepreneurship. So I remember I really had this dream of being a diplomat, and I associated that with things that I thought were important to me. So number one, this idea of being part of something greater than myself, and number two, I guess just like the influence and prestige of these things. And um, I carried this dream after college. So I decided after college that I wasn't ready to go into that track immediately, and I wanted more real life experience. So I actually decided to become a teacher. I applied to this fellowship called World Teach. They're now defunct, but they used to send teachers all over the world for teaching assignments of a year. China was a location of theirs. They also had locations across the Oceania, other parts of Asia, Europe, and even Latin America. And then, so I did World Teach in Hunan for a year. And then I joined another nonprofit called Teach for China, which is kind of like Teach for America. They're a fellowship program, volunteer nonprofit that recruits recent college grads to teach English for 2 years in rural parts of China. So all throughout the entire process, I thought that, the pot of gold at the end of all these years of service is becoming a diplomat. And I even took the test. I went back to DC on one of the
Wow.
breaks and I took the foreign service exam. I ended up getting to the second round, but I was rejected. And I think it was at the time, so it was during my third year in China. So 1 year of World Teach, 2 years of Teach for China, 1, 2, 3 years. I was getting ready to apply to grad school. And I was like, all right, life is getting real now. So I actually have to like, I can't just like not have an idea of what I'm doing. I actually
Hmm.
need to do some research and figure out what comes next. So I did something very simple. I looked at the employment report of of some of these graduate schools that are set up for people that want to enter public service. So at the time I was considering international relations, public service, and I looked at the job descriptions, and I started researching, okay, what exactly does a diplomat do? What exactly, does like a research fellow do? And then I realized that while they sound really cool, I actually want like I'm actually not interested at all in the substance of the work.
Hmm.
I remember after like I had this impression that, as a diplomat, you don't just get to do your own thing. You need to represent the people in power. And I remember after the US interventions overseas during the Bush eras, I was like, do I really want to have to like, defend this stuff
That's a
If
lot
I
of
don't personally believe it,
yeah. It's a lot of responsibility to hold on your personal face for a nation.
I guess like some people are good at compartmentalizing, but for me,
Right,
I've always
right.
had to
Yeah.
be consistent, right? Like
Mm,
I need to be this like passion, mission driven person and
I
do
hear
stuff
you.
that is aligned. And so, I just realized that I was not aligned enough with the roles and responsibilities of a diplomat to
Yeah,
actually want to go and do it. I have another point that I'll make about this sometime in the future of this podcast.
sure.
But just to summarize my answer, my third year, I decided that, hey, I don't think that the foreign service is the right avenue for my passions. I
Hmm.
like the idea of business. I think that, particularly entrepreneurship, I feel like it's a lot more like choose your own adventure. And so I ended up applying to business school after 3 years in nonprofit in China. And I went
Hmm.
to the University of Pennsylvania for my MBA. And I started the program in 2016.
Gotcha. Very cool. So I remember us talking about kind of your experience at Wharton and how in the beginning you kind of felt like a little bit like out of it. You kind of felt like I kind of have like imposter syndrome or like, I'm going from international relations to entrepreneurship, but all of the people around me, like they seem to already have this kind of experience or they're, in finance or consulting and whatnot. So what was that, what was that like process like for you, both in kind of finding your own confidence that you
Yeah.
can actually do what you want to do and execute on a vision and build a company. And what was it like kind of mingling with those types of people in that environment?
Yeah. So when we discuss this today in the present, with hindsight, everything seems so clear and strategic. But actually, the truth is,
Right, right.
I had a very incoherent idea, a very incomplete idea of what I was getting myself into. I just had this high level notion that business seemed more suited to my needs. And, like I was still driven by this achievement mentality. So I
Hmm.
wanted to go to a school that had a reputation and also had a program for international relations. And that's it, right? I didn't have this very clear idea that, oh, I'm really passionate about this, I must do this. This is all very incomplete. So when I went to when I matriculated in 2016, all I knew is that, okay, I'm going to Wharton, I'm entering a dual degree program that has a tie with international relations, so I feel like I'm going to be among my ilk, my academic ilk, in this program. And let's just take it from there. The only planning I did for my future was to look at the employment report for the school.
Hmm.
This Asian practicality
Sure.
is coming out in me. And I
Yeah.
saw that consulting, management consulting seems like a very highly paid and prestigious position. And you
Yes.
like in a similar way that I understood the foreign service, I also had the same assumptions about these careers in the business field. It management consulting seems like the way to go. They pay you really well. You get to talk to important people. They'll put you in
Hmm.
five-star hotels. Yeah, it really strokes the ego.
Fancy
And I think that's what I want
PowerPoints.
to do.
Yep.
Yeah. So actually, I wrote my admissions essay on that, and
Wow.
which is
Okay.
fine, right? Like at the time, like you need to present yourself as you are, and you figure things out as you go along. And I remember going into school, they do these things called info sessions where employers come and they try and pitch the firm
Hmm.
to the MBA students. And I remember the first time I actually heard a management consulting job presentation, I was like, I really don't think this is for me. Like, I have
Yeah.
actually no interest in helping a big company make more money or cut
Yeah.
costs. It sounds interesting, but I don't think I really care about this stuff at an intrinsic level. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the first year was actually quite difficult because I felt like intuitively I knew that this was not my path. But at the same time, you don't know what else is out there.
Right.
And even worse, you're surrounded by a legion of people
Hmm.
who are extremely smart and sound like they have life figured out, who are all going in this direction.
Yeah,
It can be quite disorienting.
for sure. Like why does everybody want this thing that seems completely unappealing to me, right? This kind of feeling can be
Yeah.
quite disorienting, right? So over time, how did you kind of eventually find your own kind of more stable footing, or how did you learn to, I guess, listen to yourself a little bit more and maybe block out some of these other voices or influences?
Yeah, so I think that I've always known that if I have some intuition about something, it's a signal to me that I need to keep pulling on that thread.
Mm,
So what I ended up, and of course, like practical experiences in life will help to guide and nudge you, and they'll unlock different levels of experience, which
mhm,
it's kind of an iterative process. So what I did practically in business school was first year was actually really tough, particularly the first semester. I actually remember, I think like I'm conscious of this now, but I remember being so intimidated by my lack of an anchor that I would
mhm.
actually physically remove myself from campus every single weekend. I had a car at the time, and I would drive 2 hours back to Maryland
Oh,
for the
wow.
weekend just to physically not be there. And at the time, like I couldn't articulate why I was doing this, but in hindsight, I look back and I was like, yeah, you know what? Like it was kind of like self-care. This idea of going to a space that felt familiar, where I could be a little bit more grounded and not just be like in this environment that is very go 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 and lose
Yeah,
myself in it. So
right.
that's a soft practice. Practical things that actually happened were I ended up getting an internship that summer that kind of checked the boxes for me. It allowed me to address some of the questions that I had about myself going in and give me clarity for the future. So the role was actually with Apple in their corporate social responsibility department.
Mm,
This is not a traditional role that they hire for. They was, I'm forever grateful for the manager that put this role for hiring. She was from the Labor and Human Rights Department in Corporate Social Responsibility. And as you know, Apple works with a lot of factories in China to produce
oh,
their
yeah.
products. So they were looking for an intern that could help them do some analysis about workers in their supply chain. And I
Mhm.
just happened to have the experience in Teach for China working with rural populations. So I was a fit for the role. I
Yeah,
remember I ended up beating out hundreds of applicants, not because I was like more academically gifted, but just because I had an experience which was more aligned to the role. And
yeah,
that
perfect
internship,
fit.
it checked the boxes. So it helped me resolve a lot of doubts that I had about myself. So number one doubt, with my nonprofit experience, am I actually good enough to exist in the corporate world? Well, Apple gave me
Mhm.
an internship, right? So I felt that checked the box. Second, with my nonprofit experience, like can I actually earn good money, or like is my skill
Yeah.
set there?
Can I
Apple
support my
paid a
living? Yeah.
boatload of money to their interns, so that checked the box. And then the other was I really wanted to see what corporate life was like. And I got that through that internship, and I had enough of experience that I realized that this is really nice, but I still felt like working for a large organization was just a little bit too removed from
Mhm.
stuff that I cared about, right? So in my
Yeah.
second year, I gave up a return offer, and I made the decision that yeah, I think that I need to figure out. I just can't find any job that really suits my interest, so I'm just gonna make my
Make
own
your own.
job, and
Yeah.
yeah, and see if I can figure out. So that was the journey.
Yeah, no, that's thank you for sharing. And I think we definitely, I think Matt and I probably relate to many aspects. Like
Oh,
for
yeah.
me,
Yeah,
especially when you talk about your first year, like really physically removing yourself from like pen to be at like a safer space. And I just remember
Mhm.
like last year living in Shenzhen and doing like all those weekend trips just to not be in Shenzhen and be engrossed in
Yeah,
that like
exactly.
hustle
Right.
culture. And I just go visit Beijing, visit Matt, like
yeah,
whenever like I had the opportunity. It was like,
Mhm.
oh, just gotta forget about my actual environment. And
yeah.
I also think the part about like the Apple role definitely I think it's important to have that validation that even if it's not the role that like oh it's not like something you will eventually go into like you mentioned you didn't take their offer, but it still gave you that validation that like what you were
Mhm.
doing and what your background was like that was important. And I know there was a lot of like news back in like the 2010s, like of like Foxconn workers like committing suicide and all of
Mm.
that. So it's good that they had this role or they had this like
Sure.
department looking into
Yeah.
just the factory workers, and it
Wonder
did seem like you were a good fit.
I
Yeah,
wonder if it's
I had a lot of
still
fun.
yeah, still there, like, if they still have this department and if it's still, like,
They
a
do.
functioning
Yeah,
entity. Yeah.
yeah, they do. They
Okay.
You can check out the website. Their sustainability report every year is produced
Cool.
by this department. It's still there. And just, one more response to you, Susan. I think one of my reflections through this process is that I actually think that it's perfectly valid to seek validation from structures in society. I don't think that
Yeah.
there's anything wrong with that. Your needs are different. You evolve as a person, and during certain seasons, sometimes you just need a bit of encouragement. I just think that at some point, you really have to decide what is your priority, right? Is it
Hmm.
so? Do you want to exist in that space, your entire life, or are there other things that you pursue that might cause you to, make a trade off between what's safe and 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 what is what you really want to do, right? So yeah, that's why, no judgment, right? Like people make their choices in life, and I just view everyone's choices as a representation of what they prioritize. My only hope is that, if someone is struggling with figuring out which direction to go, I hope that people can have the courage to really go after what it is that they want inside, um,
Hmm.
at some point in their life.
Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. And sounds like you did just that. I mean,
Yeah.
tell us about Keru then. Tell us about what you went ahead and built.
Yeah, so my volunteer experiences gave me some pretty solid ideas of things that I like. These experiences connected me to fundamental attributes that I just appreciated. So I love travel. I just love going to a completely different place and experiencing the new culture. I love service, as we discussed, and I like to do this activity in groups. Those are the three things that, when I was doing my self-assessment, I was like, all right, I really care about these things and I want to help people. So I came up with this idea that, all right, why don't I organize trips for other students to go and travel to communities that are different than themselves and do acts of service? So they could be things like teaching, like I did, or doing
Hmm.
analysis and reports, gathering stories from locals. I thought that these would be powerful ways to engage other communities and also help other young learners. So I just knew that this was something that had been good for me, and I wanted to share it with other people. In my second year of business school, I was like, all right, well, now I need to graduate and actually make a living. So why don't I see if I can make a business out of this? So I started planning a trip. The trip was to Yunnan province, and the concept was there were some there was a nonprofit that I connected with that distributes water filters, and they're looking for new project sites. So thought, why don't I take a bunch of students to some rural schools in Yunnan? We'll do some site analysis and we'll see if we can discover some new sites that the nonprofit can donate filters to. So I organized a 17-day trip. I ended up recruiting 8 students for this program. 6 adults
Wow.
came with me as mentors. We went out to Yunnan and we visited a couple schools and we helped identify sites. That was my first trip in 2016. Had a great time. Was able to charge people for this experience. So it was self-sustaining. And after that first trip, I was like, hey, this concept could actually work as a business.
Hmm.
And I moved to Shanghai, and I spent 6 years there, growing this company, and we're still around today.
Yeah, still around today. That's more than you can say for most entities that went through the.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. So how did it like that first trip though? I'm curious, like how did you figure out like just the logistics of like, I mean, 17 days, like how did you get the students? How did you get the students
Hmm.
there? Like what was like that
That's a lot of
like
people too, right?
yeah, yeah, and like
Like
just get
almost
this all
20 people.
organized.
Okay, so there's several different elements. The first element is you got to figure out what it is you're doing, right? So what is the actual mission? So based on this notion of help, I was able to connect 2 dots. The first dot is that my friend who runs a water nonprofit has filters to donate. He needs to find new sites. The second dot
Hmm.
is that under resource schools in Yunnan, the ones that I was exposed to as a Teach for China volunteer have use for donations. So once I made that connection, I was like, okay, um, I could facilitate this, but you can't just give away stuff to people, right? You kind of need to do a
Hmm.
needs analysis. You need to make sure that this is a good stewardship of the donation, hence the need for an actual trip to go out there. So the second point, so first point is figuring out the need. Second point is, all right, I need this to pay for itself. So
Yep.
so who is going to pay for this, and how do I organize it? And
Hmm.
I knew that there are students out there who are looking for summer camps, summer activities. I did this as a volunteer activity, and I paid money to go to China and paid money to cover costs and to support the organization. So I knew that people would pay money for this. So I created a PowerPoint and I started messaging everybody I knew. And I said, hey, I'm really passionate about this project. Do you know people that are in high school that are looking for things to do? And through the grapevine, I ended up getting in touch with a couple of parents. One of the students was a sibling of my classmate, and I would share with them
Oh.
about what I did. Yeah. I ended up finding 8 students from different parts of China, somewhere in the US. And I distinctly remember in mid-April, my first student paid me.
Mm-hmm.
She handed me a check for for a large amount of money that I had never seen before. It was not that much, but like a large amount of money for me. And as I
Mm-hmm.
took the check from her, like this thought in my mind, I cannot believe someone is actually paying me to do something. And I
Yeah.
remember like it took all of my willpower not to rip that check out of her hands and just run to the bank and cash it. But thankfully I maintained my composure. And over the next two
Thankfully.
months, April, May, and
Yeah.
June, we ended up getting the other students. I sent them a trip itinerary, much in the way a group tour does things. I met them
Mm-hmm.
at the airport and we had a great 17 days in Yunnan.
Wow. Yeah. The first of many trips. And also, yeah,
Yeah.
Keru and these service learning, experiential learning projects that you do with students. That's also how I guess we came to know each other. From the same
Yeah.
industry. Right. And so, yeah, kind of looking back at all of the different projects that you've designed or led for Keru in different places, different types of projects, what would you say are like some of the characteristics or the attributes for the projects that were the most successful in terms of actually influencing the students, in terms of actually impacting maybe the way that they saw the world or help them understand themselves or what they wanted to do better? Because I'm sure you've
Yeah.
done a ton, right? And not all of them are equally as successful. And how, I guess another
Yeah.
follow up question is how do you define success now for these trips?
Okay. I'll answer your questions in order. So I can think of 2 trips that were really meaningful. The first is in Shanghai, we work with an organization that supports blind and low vision individuals, and their purpose is to educate other people about the needs of this community. So our
Mm-hmm.
program is a 10-day program with them, happens in the summer, and the students will come and they will work with these blind. So we actually work with blind and low vision athletes. So they'll work with these athletes, these Paralympic athletes, to
Okay.
design a new sport, right? So in the past, and so
Wow.
the blind and low vision athletes, they spend the 10 days with the kids and they actually work with them. They give them real time feedback to design this game. Some of the games that have been developed are things like a dart game for which has a sensor that provides feedback to the player. So, like even if you can't see what's going on, you know where the dart landed, something
Mm.
like that, right? The biggest takeaway for that program is I think all of the students that join our projects are good-hearted. They genuinely want to help others. What I love about the program is that this might sound a bit cliche, but they really learn that they get helped as much from the experience as they help. and
Mm.
and I love how they learn how to interact with people who are different on a basis of parity rather than looking down at people as objects of help.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
every student has good intentions,
Yeah.
but they might come in with this attitude that like I have full functioning eyes, and so like I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, but you might miss half of the learning, which is that, you realize that other people, blind and low vision people have other skills and strengths. And if you open your
For
mind,
sure.
you can definitely be helped with them. So I remember a girl joined and she was like very, she was just like an introvert, right? And to her surprise, her co-designer, who was this blind individual athlete, was the most extroverted person ever,
Mm-hmm.
always encouraging group participation. And over the course of the 10 days, she actually, learned to develop more confidence. She felt safe enough to be invited into the group. And I was like, and while at the same
Wow.
time, leveraging her talents to design the game. And I was like, this is a perfect example of mutual interactions, right? And I
Yeah.
think that for me, you asked what defines success, it's really this, right? Like learning to interact with people on the basis of parity, on the basis of exchange. I think that allows for connections that for me, connections like these are pillars, right? Like they're
Hmm.
friendships is what they are. And I think that having good friends, having community, I mean, isn't that all something that we want in life? So for me,
Yeah.
that's one of the attributes of success.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that that's probably why this program and the programs that you do, they're a little bit different than maybe a lot of the voluntourism service projects that we see in the mainstream kind of international education market, where it's really easy to kind of put together an itinerary. It's really easy to find someone, quote unquote, who needs help, right? Or a group of people or an entity, and it's easy to send your little minions over and help and have them stroke their own egos and, do stuff, right? But at the end of the day, I think a lot of those programs and colleges, of course, have now come to understand it's very limited in terms of how it actually shapes a person. And, what you just described there, I think, if students can get any percentage of that feeling, it definitely helps them mature a lot more and probably helps them grow in the right direction in the future.
Yeah, I love to see that.
Yeah, cool. So I guess Kuru went pretty smoothly, I assume, in the beginning, kind of
Yeah.
growing gradually, I suppose. And then when COVID hit, what kind of happened with the company? How did
Man,
you manage this big transition or this plague?
okay. Oh man. Okay, so COVID was a huge shock to us and really challenged the fundamentals of the business. I remember in 2020, I was actually in Cambodia when the pandemic hit, and I got this news of this strange virus. Nobody knew what it was, but I just remember, this is the thing about Chinese people. Chinese people are very quick, and there were a lot of them in Cambodia at the time. And I just remember going on the streets of Phnom Penh and seeing Chinese business people going from store to store to store buying up masks. And that was the signal to
Wow.
me that something is up. So so the first thing that I did was, and I kind of mean this as a joke, was to change our business model. So after witnessing those people buying up masks, I went out to buy masks the very same day and I brought them back to China and I sold masks. And because we weren't able to run
Yeah.
and I don't know if I should say this because I might get in trouble with the Chinese government, but for a time, we weren't able to do any travel programs. So I was thinking, but we were able to travel. I was thinking, should I just send my staff out globally to like buy up masks and like sell in China? Like, should we just become like an import company? Um, obviously that didn't last, and we were left facing a very real problem. So we tried a lot of different things. We tried running online classes. We had one good season for that, but our identity is really not online. And I
Hmm.
realized that in business, if you execute fast enough, you can always do something to make quick money if you hit the right trend. But if you don't really fundamentally care about it, it's never going to sustain itself. So for us, that meant trips. Thankfully, China had controlled the virus quite well. So we were able to get back to operation in 2020 that summer, and things were
Hmm.
okay. 2020, 2021 were years of growth for us. We actually ended up growing during that year. There was a lot of captive business within China,
Sure.
students that
Yeah.
needed activities that could not go out, and we were just, there at the right time, right place to provide service. 2022 is when the floor fell out, and I learned a really hard lesson in business, which is that, as good as it is to be optimistic, you also need to manage risk. I had not managed risk very well. Um, I had basically taken the signal of increased business during 2020 and 2021 as a sign that I should expand the business, and I
Hmm.
increased hiring. We went from 5 people to 10 people, and the floor fell out of the market in 2022, and I just found myself with my pants down financially, and I actually had to end up letting a lot of the team go.
Mm.
So 2022, we went from 10 people to 4 people. Very, very difficult psychologically. It definitely put me in some mild grade depression.
Mm.
When China opened up in 2022, I actually ended up coming back to the US to take an extended break. And, the company has kind of been at this level since. A lot smaller, about 40% our pre-pandemic size.
Hmm.
And I think ego-wise and psychologically, it was really tough for me. But what I've come to realize is that it actually fits my personality to run this type of business a lot more. We are
Hmm.
a seasonal business now. We are heavy in the summer, and the rest of the time I'm able to travel and do other things. And I
Hmm.
actually realized, like, once I got beyond that ego hit, I realized that this is actually a much more suitable lifestyle for me. And I'm
Yeah.
actually glad that, I was kind of thrown off this uh never ending wheel of increasing
Yeah.
expectations to be able to enjoy a slower pace of life and explore things that I never would have had the chance had I remained on that hamster wheel of work.
I hear you, man. Yeah. Similar experience with me also running like my small consulting company in Beijing for a few years during COVID and
Yeah,
then dissolving it eventually and becoming more of like a freelancer. I think gives us a lot more flexibility, less stress as well, more, I guess, control over how we want to spend our time, especially in the non-busy seasons. And I think
yeah,
for you and I, definitely, we are people who are very interested in going out and acquiring very different types of diverse experiences, and then letting those experiences kind of take root within ourselves, creating this cycle, which eventually,
mm,
I think we both believe that the fruits of this experiencing will eventually appear elsewhere, maybe in something that
yeah,
makes money, maybe not, maybe in new connections, new projects, but in things that are ultimately fulfilling and sustainable for ourselves, right?
totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay, we definitely have a lot of questions for your like nomadic lifestyle. But
Yeah.
first, I'm kind of also just curious about just Kuro in the beginning because
Mm,
starting from that first trip, you seem to have recruited more like, okay, American students. You take that trip to China, but then you move yourself back to Shanghai and actually
yeah.
and then started a company there and did this full time. So what was moving to China like? Like before you were there as like a
Hmm.
volunteer, but then now you're there as a like starting your own running your own company. Like,
Like it.
tell us
Yeah.
tell us about that and just like living
Yeah.
there, adjusting to things.
So when I moved to Shanghai right after business school, I was how old was I? I was 28 at the time. And my mentality at the time was, okay, I've had like my fun in life, and I still want to have fun in life, but I now need to make a living. There's been a lot of investment in this 28 years, and now I need to show that I can be productive. So I think I had this pressure that I need to succeed. And to me, success meant making money, and in my mindset, like, the way that I can make money and also maintain my independence is being an entrepreneur. So why Shanghai? I'd only been there once for my business school interview 2 years prior in 2014. And I thought, hey, this seems to be a nice city. It's halfway between Beijing and Shenzhen, the middle of
True.
the
Yeah.
country. Why not, right? So on a whim, actually, I just moved there. I'm not really a planner, so I just decided to move to Shanghai and set up our company there. I knew nobody. I kept in contact with a lot of connections from Teach for China who moved there. I had some business school classmates, and then I was at the time attending a church there, so some church friends. So that was my
Hmm.
community. And slowly, like, you share about what you're doing, you accumulate connections. But yeah, I went through the whole bootstrap entrepreneurship process myself.
Hmm.
I never really, like, I guess, like, again, like, you don't really realize, like, I think you can articulate why you do things in hindsight. But at the time, I didn't take investment. I wasn't like, I just never really felt drawn to this like Silicon Valley style of entrepreneurship. Now I realize that it's because, like, I really value control and doing things my way over,
Yeah.
making a boatload of money. But I remember at the time I was like, all right, yeah, I'm just gonna rough it. So I did the whole bootstrap entrepreneur thing, working at, I remember the first 2 months I was working at coffee shops, and I spent every day at the coffee shop, and I memorized their soundtrack, because they only had like 10 songs, and I would hear that like 30 times a day. So I memorized their soundtrack, like, planned my time according to, like, when is this song, when this song plays, I know I've been
That's
working for like
hilarious.
an hour and I need to take a break. I don't even need to look at my watch. And I saw the flow of people coming in and out, like the afternoon crowd. So that was my life, and eventually we upgraded to an office. I got staff. I can tell more stories about this that are quite funny. But yeah, I'm glad for that experience. Because I think it was a lot of fun. And when you're in your late 20s, like
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, you want to have stories. So yeah, I have I have tons of stories. But yeah, we were blessed that we grew every single year. It was just the right time to enter the market. There were several forces, increasing numbers of Chinese students going to the US. People still had a lot of disposable income. There was not a lot of competition, so it was just a good time to be in the market.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think those few years definitely there's a lot of growth. It was before the ed tech crackdown
Yeah.
kind of. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I totally relate to the story of like the bootstrap entrepreneur working at cafes. I think like my last company when we first started, we were just like we had every single weekly meeting at like a different cafe in the city, and then we'd work out at different cafes, and then we eventually got an office, and we're like, wow, like
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
upgrade, and
It's
no,
pretty
it's a
nice.
vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
feel like you've made it. And then I remember, oh man, I remember, okay, so I remember like this is a story that really touched me. I remember I was looking for my first office, and I was considering between two office locations. And actually I was actually like strung up for offices, but my staff, sole staff at the time said, we need to find an office. So I went out and I found this office, and it was this like Spartan office in like a manufacturing district in Shanghai. And I took my staff there, and clearly like and she's like from Shanghai, so she's like someone with expectations about her working environment. And I remember like she
Yeah.
looked at me, and she's like gave me this look, and I'm like, oh gosh, she's gonna leave. And she's like, Ming, if you choose this office, we'll make it work. And I was like, oh, that is like the most heartwarming message of loyalty that I've ever received for
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah.
I was like, all right, I
Stayed for
cannot
the
give her
work.
this office. I need to find a better option. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give it one more day. I contacted the real estate agent, and it took me across the street where they were opening a new co-working space. It was a brand called Distry, which was
Mm-hmm.
less well priced than WeWork. It was lower priced than WeWork and Naked Hub at the time. And they took me to their smallest office, corner off, like inside office, no windows, like 3,500 per month, and but much
Pretty
better
good.
environment. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is it. And I chose that, and that was our first office. And me and my staff very happy to come along with me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's how we started. And then eventually we moved to WeWork about, I think, 2 years later, and
Mm-hmm.
it was the one on Nanjing West Road. I was only paying around $5,000 for like a two-seater, but when we moved there with the nice, colorful couches, I was like, "We've made it, man!" Like, yeah, we're legit. I feel proud to invite people to this office now.
Yeah, yeah. For coffee chats and stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's all about the colorful couches. Oh my God. Our first office, we had the couches, we had like a view, and like yeah, we made it. We might be sharing this space with like 10 other startups, but like no.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good feeling for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And it had
Yeah,
free beer at the time, so my staff really liked that. It was a fun place to be.
Mm.
nice. Yeah. So I guess then moving I guess culturally then in Shanghai, and also as you like you mentioned you love to travel, you love to relate to different like communities. When you first started both like living in Shanghai and taking students on these trips to different parts of China, like how did you feel like you fit in culturally? Like were you able to, I guess, given your background, did you feel like you could relate to these people? Did you were there like challenges, or were things made easier because of what you'd had experienced before?
Yeah. To be honest, overall in China, I've always felt extremely welcome. I think as an Asian American, locals view me as someone with whom they have less distance than
Mm-hmm.
someone who has no Asian heritage at all. So that's a huge plus. Improving my Chinese, being able to speak Chinese helps. And then I just think the general vibe of China has always been very welcoming. I think that there's two dimensions that are worth noting. I think that with any group, so like I said, So I think with any group, you won't connect with everyone, right? There's always a spectrum of people with different values and different priorities. So in any group, you will definitely find people that you can connect with, whether or not you are culturally connected to them or not. It's just a matter of finding them. So in China, I think that I've had two dimensions of connection. The first one is people who share my values. So those values being eagerness to travel, liking service. I found those people both in Shanghai and as we've traveled. And then I think the other dimension is people who are more closely connected to nature. So the immediate group that has that connection in abundance is villagers in China who are still
Yeah.
like 45% of the population. And I
Yeah.
really didn't realize this at the time, but every single time I went to the village, I was just astounded by how easily villagers navigated the land, right? So being able to use natural resources. I'm a big foodie, so something that I've become aware of is just how good food tastes in a village, especially when it's grown by people who are there and who know what they're doing. So that was a huge discovery. So those things have been things that so to answer your question, I feel like increasing self-awareness about what's important to me has helped me be able to focus what I'm looking for. And so that comes in two ways, right? Finding people that share those similar values and connecting
Hmm.
more closely to nature, and developing those skills myself. And
Yeah.
and that's made the whole process of being in China easy. And to actually be fair, it makes the process of being in any different culture easy because, I know what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Definitely. Finding people who are on the same path, even if you have very different,
Yeah,
upbringings or cultural backgrounds, it's really not a barrier at all. Right.
which is great.
Yeah. And also, I guess kind of looking ahead a bit more. So after you had been doing Keru for a period of time and, taking it through COVID, downscaling it, finding this new kind of approach that worked best for you. From then on, and then actually trying the nomad or itinerant lifestyle, like what was the decision making process like for that, where you sold everything and decided to,
Yeah,
not keep a permanent home in any
yeah.
place and just move, wherever the work brought you or wherever, your travels brought you. It sounds like this romanticized kind of idea of, traveling and living that a lot of young people, I'm sure, would look on quite fondly and with some envy. But so yeah, what prompted you to try that, and what was it like?
Okay, so there are several factors. The first factor was that on a personal level, there were some situations that I had to resolve in Shanghai that made me realize that, yeah, maybe it was time to find a different living arrangement. And since I have the freedom to do that, or since I was pushed into doing that, do I want to find another place in Shanghai, or do I want to, try something new?
Hmm.
So that was the first impetus. The second was this realization. So sometime during the pandemic, I just realized that a lot of the structures in the urban lifestyle are kind of like I just found myself less and less aligned with that, right? So I can give more examples later, but even things like,
Hmm.
like your morning coffee routine, like getting your exercise, like going to the gym after work. I just had this moment where I realized that like certain structures exist, and I'm used to them, but do I really like that, right? Like I actually
Hmm.
love climbing mountains and like, climbing up and down terraces, the terrace fields, like not necessarily, lifting weights or running on a treadmill, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love like I love connecting with farmers and buying my food directly from them, not having some sugared beverage, you know, marketed to me, and like it needing to be something to wake me up rather than something that whose taste I savor. So I just
Hmm.
felt that there were a lot of attributes of the urban lifestyle which fit me less and less, and I was like, hey, I kind of feel like I need to see what's out there. So so because of that realization and circumstances with my living arrangement in Shanghai, I was like, yeah, I think it's time to move. So I sold everything that I had in Shanghai. I
Hmm.
constituted everything I had left into one backpack, and I just decided to go
Crazy.
visit places. Yeah, I
Yeah.
started I started by visiting friends, and that whole trajectory evolved.
Hmm. So how many places did you end up living in or traveling to throughout this period of time? And which were your favorites, and which were which were not as good for you?
Yeah. Okay, I can't really badmouth any country, but there's no
Right,
country to
right.
badmouth anyway. So they're all learning experiences. I probably visited about 25, 30 places. Some places I would stay for like a week. Other places I would stay for up to 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
The most memorable experiences was where I visited business partners. So villagers, nonprofits that are working in rural areas who I have a work connection with.
Mm.
There have been two locations that have really stood out to me. The first was Thailand. I have a really good nonprofit partner there. And I remember this partner took me to visit one of her friends who has the exact lifestyle that I want in the future. So this guy is
Mm-hmm.
living, he's a Thai. He's, very well educated in nutrition science, and he lives on the edge of Chiang Mai, and he basically built his own house. So the attributes of his house are that they are made out of recycled shipping containers. So
Okay.
I think it's really cool. He also farms his own like so when I visited him, we like cut down banana trees to enjoy bananas. He built his own fishing pond, and I was like, dude, this guy is like everything. He even built his own elevator to get up floors in his house. So that inspired me with, I guess, like the mindset of handiness, being useful with your hands, that I hope that I
Mm-hmm.
can have. The second place that was truly life-changing was visiting Pakistan this May. So I hired an accountant through Upwork. They're a remote talent agency, and the accountant just happened to be in Pakistan. I really got along well with them. So
Mm-hmm.
this May, I took a bus from Xinjiang across the Kunjer past the world's highest international land border at 4,800 meters. And I visited my Pakistani accountants in a place
Wow.
called Gilgit, and
Okay.
it was incredible. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of really unforgettable experiences from the people that you meet on these travels.
Yeah.
But so after I guess a few years of doing this, you decided that it also wasn't the right kind of lifestyle for you, right? You still needed to find your roots somewhere, so to speak.
Hmm.
So what was kind of that realization like? In what ways was this itinerant lifestyle nourishing you, and in what ways was it kind of also showing you that the next step for your life would be something quite different?
Yeah, so the itinerant lifestyle is great because you get to see a lot of things, but as I'm sure many people have said before, it can be quite tiring because you don't really have like a home to go to. You're staying at someone else's home. You're staying in hotels. You don't feel rooted. I think that for me, okay, so I was a digital nomad for about 4 years, and 2022 to actually 3 years, 2022 to 2026, this year. Recently, I have been home in Maryland, just hanging out with my parents for the last 3 months. I'm planning to be here for half a year. I wouldn't say that my desire for travel has changed. I would say that I needed time at home to focus how I want to travel. I plan to go back on the road in March, but this time I am only going to do volunteering in rural areas. And my goal
Hmm.
for this is I actually want to go through the process of helping people build stuff. So whether it's their homestay or just
Hmm.
connecting with other volunteers who are doing communal living, co-living arrangements to get a better sense of, I guess, how that might manifest in my life in the future. I think I eventually would like to have a place of my own, and I view this next, year of travel as a way to get more relevant experience.
Hmm.
The other thing is that, as I'm sure we all agree on, I think family is really important to all of us. And 6 months at home, with my parents has been really life-giving. Just a
Hmm.
chance to invest in them a little bit more deeply and have an adult relationship with my folks. We get along very well. We have similar
Yeah.
interests. While I've been home, I've been able to do things like take them to work out, keep fit, keep strong, go support them in some of their work. And I think that, that has also clarified that, family and relationships are very important. And I do want to have a certain type of relationship. And I hope that the travel can kind of help me define the attributes that I'm looking for in relationships in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely important to have kind of a period of stability to kind of reevaluate. Because when
Yeah,
you're always traveling and you're always on the go, it's hard to like find that quiet space where you can actually contemplate and reflect on like what you're going through and decide how to like best optimize the next steps. So
Mm-hmm.
it is like, yeah, it's like a revitalizing yourself in this
right. And I love it. I think that it's important to listen to what your body is telling you. So I physically felt tired. I felt unmotivated to go places. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that, that's your signal that you need some time to rest.
Yeah, a little bit of burnout, perhaps, right?
Yeah, a little bit of burnout.
Yeah.
I think that, at a certain level, you have to fight societal expectations, right? In the West and
Mm-hmm.
also in China, you're just conditioned to think that you need to be doing something with every hour and every season of your life.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I would challenge that on two levels, right? Like I think that being still is not doing something. Like being still is also doing something,
yeah.
in a different way. And also, yeah, just life isn't this hamster wheel.
I see you've picked up a
for
lot of
sure.
Eastern philosophy in your time in China, man. A lot of
I have.
wisdom, the Buddhism and the Taoism. I like it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I hear it.
Yeah, it's hard to get yourself out of that hustle mentality for sure. It's like, but
Mm-hmm.
it's getting used to. But so what are you working on now then? And how are you prepping for the future? What is the outlook?
The vision.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm still real. Okay, I'm still really excited to run my company because we're a lot smaller. It only takes about 2, 3 months out of my year, mainly in the summer, which leaves me 9 to 10 months to think about other things. As I travel, I really want to do some writing. So I started a Substack and I also want to tell funny stories. So I also started a YouTube. So I've been trying to
yeah,
diligently film my travels, reflect on them. And what I really want to do, actually, so during this process, I actually realized that I don't really care about how big this is. Originally, I thought I was like, all right, yeah, like I have a company. I'm gonna start all these like YouTube Substack. I'm gonna like double, triple my income, and then
yeah.
I realized this is just more work. But what do I really want? Yeah, more money would be great, but what I really want is, I feel like the process of doing this helps me develop more clarity on what I like about travel, which
Mm-hmm.
allows me to spend my time more purposefully. That's number one. And the second is these things are beacons to attract people that have similar interests. And what I really want is just to find more friends that have similar interests that I can either go visit or have adventures with. And yeah, like I said, relations and family are the most important to me. And these activities are ways to strengthen the signal to find people that are like myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that 100% as well, especially on our Substack and our writing and also the
Yeah.
newsletter and this podcast as well. Like, of course, if it eventually makes some money, that'd be great to cover the subscription costs for all the platforms that we need to make it. But at the end of the day, I think it's one way to kind of just transmit your own values and the things that you care about outwards, and to hope that you can meet interesting people who are aligned with that, and the
Mm,
possibilities seem endless. So yeah, certainly I think if you don't have like a financial goal for something like this in the beginning, it also makes it more sustainable and more likely that you'll be consistent and that you won't like start getting tired of it, right? Like
yeah.
with the podcast, I think still every time, even though we have a certain, I guess, workflow and structure now, it's still just so much fun to have like an engaged long form conversation with friends and friends of friends, and discovering and rediscovering like your stories and sharing that with others. I think that's that's what I like about it, right? So yeah,
Likewise.
plug the
Yeah.
Substack definition. Definitely, we'll have it in the
Mhm.
description and the channel. And I
Thank you.
see some potential there for your YouTube content. You're definitely trying to do some interesting editing with like the choose your own adventure stuff. And yeah, I think although it's time consuming, I'm sure it's a labor of love.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for your encouragement.
For sure, man. So, kind of rounding out our conversation, you've had so many different experiences. We've already gotten many morsels of wisdom sprinkled here and there throughout the conversation today. But say, if you had 1 to 3 kind of pieces of advice that you think you would want to share for young people who are feeling a little bit lost, who are feeling a little bit pressured to follow a certain kind of lifestyle or meet a certain set of expectations, just based off of your experiences, what are some of those pieces of advice that you would like to share with them?
Yeah, so the first is that follow your passion is definitely still alive and kicking and relevant in 2026. I feel like there's a lot of, genuine headwinds in life, right? So the job market, people worried about AI. And you know what? I find that you need to feed yourself, but passion is what makes life worth living. If other things are truly stripped away, like your ability to make an income, you will find, like the ability to pursue your passion will all exist. And if that's important to you, like you'll find a way to do it. And that can be a fuel, that can be a complementary fuel to money to keep you going in life. So I think that
Yes.
even if you look at things from a very practical standpoint, passion has utility. For me, like
Hmm.
I just love it, and I love certain things, and I want my life to be constructed around those. But even if you're very, practically driven, I think passion is utility. The second thing, oh, I had one more.
All good.
It'll
Yeah,
come to
facts
me.
though. Yeah, on passion, something just like it's something that we float around so much, we use in conversation without really thinking about what it means, and like you said, the utility that's behind it. And yeah, something like passion that's so ubiquitous, it becomes overrated. But then I think when concepts become overrated, they eventually become underrated. And so yeah, that's definitely something that I want to also kind of just emphasize a little bit for, especially for young people in high school or even in college. It's not just like a
Mm.
abstract thing, right? It is actually a source of inner motivation.
The other thing I want to encourage people is to think outside the box. So one thing I've realized through my travels is just how small my world is, right? And there are a lot of structures in place. Some of them are cultural, some of them are societal, some of it is, you know, the government that I guess lock you into a certain way of doing things. And these are very deep structures. They're not easy to challenge. But
Hmm.
so sometimes you find yourself in a system that doesn't really speak to you. And you can even get depressed if you feel lost in that system. I just want to encourage people that there are 8 billion people on this planet, all living in different systems. One of the biggest benefits of travel has just been taking me out of my bubble and just experiencing different ways of life. The reason that I found Pakistan so mind blowing is because the region that I visited showed me a vision of what it looks like to have white collar skills, but also a very close connection to the land.
Hmm.
I grew up in a city. I really didn't have that exposure. I just thought that, like you work for a company and then you just buy whatever you need. When I went to Pakistan,
Hmm.
highly educated society, they have the skills to do remote labor and perform white collar jobs like accounting, AI, optimization, stuff like that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, because it's in an isolated part of the Himalayas, they all know how to farm. They all know how to make use of the land. If, nuclear war happens and they're isolated, they don't even need to prep. They'll just be able to live, right? So
Yeah.
so that's an example of how I took myself out of my bubble. I experienced something very different, and I came away so rewarded with an expanded mindset of what's possible. So if you are a young person and you're feeling depressed or you're feeling like there's nothing out there for me, well, that's simply not true, right? There's endless number of lifestyles out there, but you do have to put an effort to find them. And then the
Yeah.
last thing I'll say, my third point is that if you have a cross-cultural background, you have a head start in doing this, right? You are used to switching between cultures. Doesn't mean that there isn't some friction there, but this is your asset in life, right? Sometimes I
Yeah.
think that Asian Americans, we kind of feel like, we don't necessarily fit into Asia, into China. We don't necessarily fit into America. We're kind of invisible. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that you have the chameleon ability to go anywhere and do anything, and that's a
Hmm.
huge gift. But it does take some, I guess, like training to
Yeah.
leverage and to discipline that use of the skill. And that's, you know, thinking in this way is already outside of the box. No one in school is going to tell you that you have this gifting and you should use it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
this is an easy practice to level up that skill.
100%. Yeah, totally agree with all of those points. And I think Susan and I we see these points reflected in our personal journeys, and eventually kind of what helps you stick apart from the crowd, and what helps you kind of develop your own, I don't want to say brand, but I guess your own reputation for being a unique human being, like being original, having your own experiences, and eventually building a life from that is self-sustaining, both spiritually and emotionally and economically, of course, like holistically. It requires you to go out and acquire these rare experiences and
Yeah.
have the time to consolidate them and to reflect on them, and to prioritize like which parts of your life you want to spend time kind of adding skill points into as you level up, right? So that eventually, when we're level 30 or 50 or 100, our lives will look very distinct from each other, and we won't have to
Mm.
compete in the same, I guess, formulaic routes that society has given us, because people will know us for what we do, and the people who want to connect with us or want to work with us, they'll know what we stand for, and we'll know what they stand for, and we'll more naturally, I suppose, make things happen. That's kind of my vision of how things ought to be.
Well, so when are you running for president on that vision?
I guess, yeah, maybe in 20 years, Josh will run as president, and then I'll be vice president. I don't think they'll
Okay.
accept like a Asian American president first, but I will assassinate Josh. Yeah. And then I will
Okay.
become the first president, the first Asian American president that way.
In
So
20 years
yeah.
in 20 years
20 years
after Trump's sixth term.
after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When the man passes, it's all us. It will
Mm-hmm.
take over.
Whatever's left, I suppose, of
Whatever is
America.
left, yeah,
Just kidding.
we'll rebuild. Nah,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing your advice. It's really cool to see just to see the similarities and also differences from every time we ask this question to
Mm-hmm.
our guests. But I
And
think
Ming is you're very eloquent, but also in a down to earth way. And I'm sure a
yeah, no,
lot of
you really
our
are.
listeners
You're like one,
appreciate that.
two, three, like yeah,
It's business school training, man. That
man,
consulting
Yeah.
training. No, but I really appreciate the opportunity, and the work that you guys do is much needed and important. And I'm just so honored that I can be a small part of it. Yeah, looking
Oh,
forward to consuming the rest of the content that you guys produce.
awesome.
yeah. No, this is super fun. Just to wrap things up, then, the little fun thing we do at the end with all of our guests is that the recommendation, but you get to pick the category, and then Matt and I will have to we're kind of put on the spot to also give a rec in that category. So, what is your category
Uh,
and what is your recommendation within that?
my recommendation. Okay, so I have to give a recommendation.
So you
You can
pick
pick
the
the
category,
category
yeah, and then you
and
give
then
your
give your
recommendation
rec.
within that
Yeah.
category, and Matt
Okay,
and I will have to give ours in that category you pick.
okay, just one word, or do I give an explanation?
Yeah. You can give some
That's
context.
fine as long as like however long you want to go on about this.
Okay, favorite thing to add, like favorite spread, favorite spreadable thing on food.
Wow.
Mm,
Okay.
wait, Ming, what's yours?
I go first. Okay, so I love setting myself up for an answer. Okay, so mine is honey, and the
Mm.
reason I say that is I recently got some really nice honey from my farmer friend in Yunnan, and it made me realize, I guess, what high quality honey is. So the
Mm-hmm.
honey that I got comes from a wild area where the bees are allowed to free range and collect nectar from all sorts of flowers. The farmers do not add sugar water, so they don't feed the bees sugar water, and they don't add syrup to the honey, and the taste is incredible. So have you ever heard of Manuka brand?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's similar, yeah, so it's similar production process, and like, so tasting this honey just suddenly made me realize all the hidden attributes that go into something that we take for granted. It also
Mm-hmm.
made me realize that there's a lot of great stuff out there that is unbranded, that is equally as good as the branded stuff, and I love discovering that because, yeah, I don't have to pay thousands of dollars for it, and yeah, I just feel like you discovered something special. So for me,
Yeah.
favorite spreadable thing in 2025 and 6 is honey.
Wow.
Beautiful.
No, that
Yeah.
made me want to sample some honey now. I feel like I definitely have not appreciated honey as very much, like
Mm-hmm.
at all. But
I'll
no,
send you some
that's
later.
fascinating. Yeah, if they have a
It's good
Taobao,
with
if they have
tea.
like a store link, yeah, let us know.
Red.
Matt, do you have something yet, or I can go for?
Yeah, I think I'll just go for pesto. I think pesto's my go-to spread if I have to spread something on like toast or, anything that's otherwise kind of bland. I just want to add some instant flavor. It's like the pesto is the prelude to a good sandwich. So, yeah, I don't cook as much as I should, but when I do, I think pesto is a good go-to. Yeah.
I can't go wrong, honestly. Basil.
Mhm. Yeah. What
Yeah,
about you, Susan?
yeah. I feel like as soon as like Ming said spread, I'm like, okay, I got this because I love kaya jam.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I it's for those who don't know, it's like a Southeast Asian pandan coconut spread that people usually eat for breakfast. They put it on their toast, and I think ever since having it for the first time in Singapore a few years ago, I've been like obsessed. And I lugged like
Mhm.
a few jars back from Singapore, and they don't sell them here in the U.S. Like I think I find
Really?
some like
Okay.
Amazon and like $30 or something. You have to really go to these specialty stores to find them. So every time I'm back in Asia, like I will get some from Asia. Like they would sell them in Hong Kong. They would
Mhm.
they had I remember when I was visiting Hainan, they had like a big nyangya like nyangre like some
Yeah.
some immigrants like cultures there, and they had a lot of kaya jam. So yeah, but I whenever I always bring it back to the States, and I put it on toast, and yeah, and I dip it into soft boiled eggs. That's the
Mm.
traditional way. That's my
Mm,
favorite like breakfast
You got
probably.
the
I approve.
affirmation, the
Yeah.
You
approval
should.
from
Yes.
from Ming,
Well. I mean, don't bother spreading it. You should just eat it. Like eat it directly.
like ice cream.
Like ice no, it is I feel like for me it's a little too sweet to eat directly, or maybe it's just the brand that I've
Mhm.
gotten, but like I love it on like a good toast, or like yeah, or even like on pancakes and stuff.
Well, I really think that you
Yeah.
should experiment being liminal with this product, which means that in this
Mhm.
country you need to deep fry it and put some cheese on it and
Oh my god.
see what it tastes like.
Yeah. And a side of pesto,
Wow.
perhaps. Sweet and
They're both
salty.
green. They're both green. You can
Actually, you know
pass.
what I would do is I would put that on like pizza crust, like so stuffed crust pizza with like kaya.
Oh, so like a dessert pizza.
Yeah.
That
That'll
could be interesting.
no,
Yeah.
that'll be good. Yeah, no, but it definitely needs to be easier to find kaya here. Like
Mm.
Mhm.
yeah, I know you can make your own with like pandan leaves and extract, but like it's yeah. I know I'm
Yeah.
sure
A
Ming
lot of
knows
work.
way more about kaya than I do though. I mean, you're giving your background. Like
Mhm.
I love it. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I love a good kaya.
yeah.
Awesome.
Alrighty then. Well, thank you. Thank you both for the Rex.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Liminal Space, where we navigate the thresholds of culture, identity, and experience. If our conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, or share your own story with us. We'd love to hear what you've discovered in the spaces in between, and join us next time as we continue to explore what it means to live in the liminal. Bye!
Bye.
See ya!